The shuttle landed on Varn Prime with a soft hiss of steam and cooling metal. The sky above was dark purple, and two pale moons hung low on the horizon. The air smelled of iron and something else, something wild and ancient. The Varn were already waiting. They stood in rows of 20, their bodies tall and covered in thick gray fur. They looked like wolves that had learned to walk on two legs, but much bigger, much stronger. Their eyes glowed golden in the dim light. Their claws clicked against the stone ground. Their ears moved constantly, catching every sound. At the front stood their leader, a female named Greshka. She was taller than the others, and old scars crossed her muzzle like badges of honor. Her voice was deep and rough when she spoke, and the other Varn listened to every word she said. She had led this hunting pack for 15 years. No one had ever defeated her in combat. The shuttle door opened, and the human delegation stepped out. There were 5 of them. They wore simple gray uniforms and carried no visible weapons. At the front walked a woman named Yuna. She was the ambassador, the one who would speak for humanity. She was young for such an important job, but her eyes were sharp and her back was straight. Behind her walked the others. Guards, advisors, translators. And at the very back, moving slowly and quietly, was a man named Dohan. Dohan was not young. His hair was gray at the sides, and small lines marked the corners of his eyes. He was not tall. He was not muscular. He walked with his hands clasped behind his back, and his face held a gentle, almost sleepy expression. Greshka's golden eyes found him immediately. She watched him walk down the ramp. She watched how his feet touched the ground. She watched how his weight shifted, how his arms hung loose, how his shoulders stayed relaxed. Everything about him was soft. There was no tension in his body, no readiness, no threat. She turned to the hunter beside her, a young male named Koro. "Look at that one," she said, her voice low. "The old one at the back." Koro followed her gaze. His lips pulled back, showing his fangs. "He moves like prey, like a grass eater waiting to be caught." "Yes," Greshka agreed. "No predator walks like that. No warrior. He has no awareness of danger. He does not watch the shadows or guard his throat. He simply exists." Other Varn had noticed too. Quiet laughter spread through the ranks. The sound was like stones grinding together, rough and mocking. Duhan heard it. His translator device was very good, and it caught not just the words, but the meaning behind them. He understood that he was being judged. He understood that he was being found weak. He simply smiled and kept walking. "Ambassador." Yuna stepped forward and performed the greeting ritual. She showed her palms to prove she held no weapons. She bowed her head briefly to show respect without submission. She spoke the traditional words in the Varn language, her accent careful and correct. Greshka responded properly, but her attention kept drifting to Dohan. He stood at the back of the group, his eyes half closed, his breathing slow and even. He looked almost bored. "Your people are smaller than I expected," Greshka said to Yuna. "We had heard that humans were fierce warriors, that you conquered your world and then reached for the stars." "We are adaptable," Yuna replied carefully. "We do not always look like what we are." Greshka was not impressed. "And that one?" She pointed a claw at Dohan. "What is he?" "He carries no weapon. He has no muscle. He stands like he is already half asleep." "Why did you bring him?" Yuna hesitated for just a moment. "He is a cultural advisor. He helps us understand different ways of thinking." Greshka laughed, and the sound made several humans flinch. "A thinker. You bring thinkers to a warrior world. Perhaps you do not understand the Varn as well as you believe." "Perhaps not," Yuna admitted. "That is why we are here, to learn." The delegation was led to their quarters, a stone building near the center of the main settlement. The rooms were large but simple, with hard beds and no decorations. The Varan did not believe in comfort. They believed in strength, in survival, in the hunt. That night, the humans gathered to discuss their first impressions. "They don't respect us," said one of the guards, a young man named Tehuan. "I could see it in their eyes. They think we're weak." "They respect strength," Yuna said. "Physical strength, combat ability, dominance. That's how their society works. The strongest lead. The weak follow or die." "Then we're in trouble," said another advisor, "because none of us can fight a Varan. They're 3 times our size and 10 times as strong." Dohan sat in the corner, drinking tea from a small cup he had brought from Earth. He did not speak. "What about you?" Taiwan asked him suddenly. "You're supposed to be some kind of expert. What do you think we should do?" Dohan took a slow sip of his tea. "I think," he said quietly, "that we should be exactly what we are." "Which is what?" "Weak? Patient?" Taiwan made a frustrated sound. "Patience won't help us when they decide we're not worth an alliance. Did you see how they looked at you? They think you're a joke." "Yes," Dohan agreed. "They do. And that doesn't bother you?" Dohan set down his cup and looked at the young guard with calm, steady eyes. "When I was young, I trained in a martial art called Taekyon. It is very old, from a country called Korea on Earth. The first lesson my teacher gave me was this: the river does not fight the mountain. It flows around it. And in time, the river wears the mountain away." Taiwan shook his head. "I don't understand." "I know," Dohan said gently. "That is okay. You will." Over the next few days, the delegation began their work. Yuna met with Varan leaders to discuss trade agreements, military cooperation, and shared defense against common enemies. The talks were difficult. The Varan were not interested in negotiation. They wanted to know what humans could offer, what strength they brought to the table. And always, they watched the humans with hungry, judging eyes. Dahan spent his mornings in the courtyard outside their quarters. He would wake before dawn, when the purple sky was still dark, and he would practice his forms. He moved slowly, his arms flowing in circles, his feet tracing patterns on the stone. His breathing was deep and rhythmic. His eyes were half-closed. To anyone watching, it looked like a strange, slow dance. There was no power in it, no aggression, no threat. It looked like nothing at all. The Varan watched, and they laughed. "The soft one is dancing again," Carl announced one morning, loud enough for everyone to hear. He stood at the edge of the courtyard with a group of young hunters, all of them grinning. "Look at him. He waves his arms like a dying bird." Koro began to mimic the movements, making them exaggerated and ridiculous. His arms flopped like wet rope. His legs wobbled. The other hunters howled with laughter. Dahan continued his practice without pause. He did not look at them. He did not react at all. "Perhaps we should help him," another hunter suggested. "Show him how real warriors move." "No," Karo said, still laughing. "Let him dance. It is good entertainment. The humans have brought us a clown." The laughter echoed across the courtyard, and Dawn, eyes half closed, moved like water through his ancient forms. Patient as a river, waiting like a storm that had not yet decided to break. 2 weeks passed on Varan Prime, and the situation did not improve. The alliance talks moved slowly. Ambassador Yuna worked hard every day, meeting with Varan leaders, presenting data, making arguments. But the Varan were difficult to convince. They did not care about trade numbers or diplomatic agreements. They cared about one thing only: strength. "Your ships are fast," Greshka admitted during one meeting. "Your weapons are clever, but your people are soft. How can we trust an ally who cannot fight beside us?" "War is not only about physical combat," Yuna argued. "Strategy, technology, resources, these things matter too. These things matter when you have already proven your worth in blood, Greshka replied. The Varan do not respect those who hide behind machines. We respect those who can look death in the eye and not look away. Una had no good answer to this. The Varan tested the humans constantly. They would stand too close, forcing the humans to step back. They would growl during conversations, watching to see who flinched. They would make sudden movements, pretending to attack, then laughing when the humans reacted with fear. The guards tried to remain calm, but it was hard. Taiwan, especially, was struggling. He was proud of his military training, proud of his strength. But here, among creatures who could tear him apart with their bare hands, his pride meant nothing. I hate this place, he muttered one evening. They treat us like children, like pets. They treat us like prey, Dahan corrected gently. That is different. How is it different? Children are protected. Pets are loved. Prey is eaten. Dahan took a sip of his tea. The Varan are predators. They understand the world through hunting. To them, everything is either a hunter or prey. We must show them that we are neither. And how do we do that? Patience. Taiwan threw up his hands. You keep saying that. Patience, patience, patience. But nothing is changing. They still laugh at us. They still mock you every morning. How much patience is enough? Dahan smiled his quiet smile. As much as it takes. The mornings continued. Every day, Dohan would rise before dawn and practice his forms in the courtyard. Every day, the Varan would gather to watch and mock him. Karo became his most dedicated audience, always there with new jokes and new insults. Today the clown is moving even slower, Karo announced one morning. Perhaps he is becoming a statue. Perhaps we should put him in the garden with the rocks. His friends laughed. One of them picked up a small stone and threw it at Dahan's feet. It landed near his toe, but Dohan did not react. He simply continued his movement, his arm tracing a slow circle through the air. He does not even notice, another hunter said. His eyes are always closed. Maybe he is blind. Maybe he is stupid, Koro added. Too stupid to know when he is being insulted. Yuna watched from a window above the courtyard. Her face was tight with worry. She had read Dahan's file before this mission. She knew about the mining colony incident, about the 12 raiders, about the reports that described his abilities as exceptional and lethal. But watching him now, she found it hard to believe any of that was true. She went to speak with him after his practice. This has to stop, she said. Every day they disrespect you, and every day they respect us less. You are hurting our mission. Dohan dried his face with a small towel. I am hurting their expectations, he said. That is different. What does that mean? The Varan expect a certain reaction when they show aggression. Fear, anger, submission, defiance. These are the responses they understand. When I give them none of these, they become confused. They do not know how to read me. They read you as weak. Yes, for now. Yuna shook her head. I don't understand your plan. If you have power, why not show it? One display of strength could change everything. Dohan looked at her with those calm, steady eyes. When I was young, I was eager to show my strength. I wanted everyone to know what I could do. My teacher saw this, and he was disappointed. Why? Because true strength does not need to be shown. It is felt. A mountain does not announce that it is tall. A river does not declare that it is deep. They simply are what they are, and the world adjusts around them. He paused. The Varan are hunters. They have good instincts. Some part of them already senses that something is wrong about me. They laugh because they are uncomfortable. They mock because they are uncertain. That sounds like wishful thinking. Perhaps. Doan smiled. We will see. The days continued. The mockery grew worse. Karo became bolder, his insults sharper. He began to follow Dohun around the settlement, making comments about his small size, his slow movements, his strange clothes. Other Varan joined in, treating the human as public entertainment. One afternoon, Koro blocked Dohun's path as he walked through the market square. "Where are you going, little dancer?" Koro asked. He was grinning, his fangs exposed. Behind him, a crowd of Varan was gathering. "To the library," Dohun replied calmly. "I am studying your history. Our history is written in blood and battle. What would a creature like you understand about that?" "I'm trying to learn." Koro leaned down, bringing his massive face close to Dohan's. His breath was hot and smelled of raw meat. "You want to learn about Varan? I will teach you. The first lesson is this: the weak exist to serve the strong. That is the natural order. That is the only truth." Dohan met his eyes without fear. "That is one truth," he said quietly. "There are others." "What others?" "The patient outlast the strong. The adaptable survive when the powerful fall. The wise know when to fight and when to wait." Koro laughed loud and harsh. "Words, pretty words from a pretty dancer. Words do not win battles. Words do not earn respect." "No," Dohan agreed. "They do not. But they plant seeds. And seeds, in time, become forests." Koro snorted and stepped aside, bored with the conversation. "Go to your library, little human. Read your books. When the real warriors are hunting, you will be safe with your words." Dohan bowed his head slightly and walked on. That night, Greshka called a meeting with her senior hunters. "The human delegation is weak," she announced. "They have shown us nothing of value. I am beginning to think this alliance is a waste of time. We should send them home." Karo agreed eagerly. "They do not deserve to breathe Varan air." But one of the older hunters, a scarred female named Bethka, spoke up. "The old one troubles me." Greshka looked at her with interest. "The dancer? Why?" "I have watched him," Bethka said slowly. "He moves strangely, not like prey, not like anything I have seen before. And his eyes, when he opens them fully, there's something there, something cold." Koro laughed. "You are imagining things. He is soft. Anyone can see it." "I have hunted for 40 years, Bethka replied. "I have killed creatures on 100 worlds. I know the difference between soft and still." She looked at Greshka. "That human is not soft. He's waiting. Waiting for what?" Bethka shook her head. "I do not know. But I think, before we send them away, we should find out." Greshka considered this. Her golden eyes gleamed in the firelight. "The Festival of Fangs is in 3 days," she said. "All visitors must attend. Perhaps we will give the old human a chance to show us what he is truly made of." She smiled, and her fangs caught the light. 3 days. That was how long the quiet would last. The Festival of Fangs was the most important celebration in Varan culture. It happened once every year, when the 2 moons aligned in the sky. For 3 days and 3 nights, the Varan would feast, drink, and fight. Fighting was the heart of the festival. Warriors would challenge each other to prove their strength. Victories brought honor. Defeats brought shame. The greatest fighters would be remembered in songs for generations. The human delegation had been told that attendance was required. It was considered a great insult to refuse. "Stay close together," Yuna instructed her team. "Do not accept any challenges. Do not make eye contact for too long. And whatever you do, do not show fear." "Easy for you to say," Taiwan muttered. "They can smell fear. Then do not feel it." The festival grounds were in a natural arena, a huge circle of stone surrounded by tall cliffs. Thousands of Varn had gathered, their fur brushed and oiled, their fangs polished. Torches burned everywhere, casting wild shadows. The air was thick with the smell of roasted meat and fermented blood wine. The humans found a spot near the edge of the arena, trying to stay out of the way. They watched as Varn warriors fought in the center ring. The battles were brutal but controlled. The goal was to force your opponent to submit, not to kill. Still, blood was spilled and bones were broken. "These people are insane," one of the advisors whispered. "They are warriors," Doan replied calmly. "This is how they prove their worth." As the night wore on, the drinking increased. Varn warriors consumed cup after cup of blood wine, a thick red drink that made their eyes shine brighter and their movements looser. They became louder, more aggressive, more dangerous. Koro had been drinking heavily. He was surrounded by his friends, laughing and boasting about past victories. But his eyes kept drifting to the humans at the edge of the arena. To Doan specifically. "I am tired of looking at that creature," Koro announced suddenly. "He stands there like a ghost. He brings shame to this festival with his weakness." His friends growled in agreement. "Someone should teach him a lesson," one of them suggested. Koro's eyes lit up. Yes, someone should." He stood and pushed through the crowd, making his way toward the humans. The Varn around him parted, sensing what was about to happen. Some began to follow, eager to watch. Yuna saw him coming. "Trouble," she said quietly. "Everyone stay calm." But Koro was not interested in the group. He walked straight to Doan, stopping just a few feet away. He was swaying slightly from the drink, but his voice was clear and loud. "Human," he said, "you dishonor this festival." Dohan looked up at him with mild interest. "I apologize if I have given offense. You give offense by existing, by standing among warriors when you are nothing but prey, by breathing air that belongs to the strong." The crowd was growing. Varn were pushing closer, forming a ring around them. Even Greshka had turned to watch, her golden eyes bright with interest. "I am here as a guest," Dohan said calmly. "I mean no disrespect. Then prove it." Koro's lips pulled back from his fangs. "Fight me. Show us that you deserve to be here. Show us that humans are more than soft meat waiting to be eaten. I would rather not fight." The crowd erupted in mocking laughter. Koro's face twisted with contempt. "Of course you would rather not. Because you are weak. Because you are nothing." He grabbed Dohan by the front of his shirt and lifted him off the ground. "You have no choice, Prey. Fight me, or I will tear your throat out right here." Time seemed to slow down. Yuna's hand moved toward the small weapon hidden under her jacket. The guards tensed. The Varn crowd pressed closer, fangs gleaming, eyes hungry, and then something strange happened. Dohan's hand moved. It was not fast. It almost looked casual, but somehow it was already touching Koro's wrist before anyone saw it travel. He pressed on a specific point, and Koro's grip failed completely. His fingers opened against his will, and Dohan dropped lightly to his feet, in the same motion. Dohan stepped to the side. No, not stepped. Flowed, and suddenly he was standing behind Koro, one hand resting gently on the young warrior's back. "I said," Dohan spoke quietly, "I would rather not." The crowd went silent. Koro spun around, his face burning with humiliation. He slashed with his claws, a strike that could tear through metal. But Dohan was not there. He had moved again, that same strange flowing motion, and now he stood to Koro's left. "Your balance is wrong," Dohan observed. "You lean too far forward when you attack. It makes you easy to read." Koro roared and attacked again. And again. And again. Each strike found nothing but air. Each lunge was redirected with minimal contact. Dohan moved like smoke, like water, like something that was not quite solid. He never attacked back. He simply avoided, redirected, flowed away. The Varan watched in stunned silence. This was not combat as they understood it. There was no aggression, no brutality, no display of dominance. And yet Koro, one of their finest young hunters, could not land a single blow on a creature half his size. "Stand still!" Koro screamed. "Fight like a warrior." "I am not fighting," Dohan replied calmly. "I am showing you something." "Showing me what?" "That strength alone is not enough." Koro attacked with renewed fury. He used everything he had: claws, fangs, kicks, headbutts. His movements became wild, desperate. Sweat matted his fur. His breathing grew ragged. Dohan continued to avoid him, making it look effortless. He was not even breathing hard. After 3 minutes, Koro stopped. He stood in the center of the ring, gasping for air, his arms trembling with exhaustion. He had not touched Dohan once. The human stood a few feet away, his clothes still neat, his expression still calm. He had not broken a sweat. "What? What are you?" Koro managed to ask between breaths. Before Dohan could answer, another voice cut through the silence. "Enough." Greshka stepped into the ring. The crowd parted instantly, pressing back to give her room. She walked with the confidence of a predator who had never known defeat, her massive frame making even Koro look small. She stopped in front of Dohan and looked down at him with those ancient golden eyes. "You dance well," she admitted. "I will give you that. Your movements are strange and hard to follow. But you do not fight. You avoid. You redirect. You run away. I do not wish to cause harm. That is the problem." Greshka bared her fangs. Among the Varan, avoiding conflict is the same as being unable to fight. Your tricks are impressive, but they prove nothing. Any creature can run away. She took another step closer, towering over him. "Show us what humans truly are," she demanded. "Show us that you can do more than dance. Or I will conclude that your species is exactly what you appear to be: soft, weak, and unworthy of our alliance." The entire arena was watching now. Thousands of Varan, all focused on this single moment. The human delegation stood frozen, not daring to move. Dohan looked up at Greshka. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned his head slightly and looked at Ambassador Yuna. Their eyes met. She saw something in his expression that she did not quite understand, a question, perhaps, or a warning. Slowly, she nodded. Dohan turned back to Greshka. And for the first time since arriving on Varan Prime, something changed in his face. The gentleness faded. The sleepy calm disappeared. What remained was something else entirely, something still, something focused, something that made even Greshka's ears flatten against her skull. "Very well," Dohan said. His voice was the same, quiet and polite. But somehow it sounded completely different. "You wish to see what humans truly are." He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were cold. "Then I will show you." The arena fell completely silent. Every Varan, every human, every creature present felt the change. It was like the moment before a storm breaks, that heavy, electric stillness when the air itself seems to hold its breath. Dohan stood in the center of the ring. He was the same man who had been mocked for weeks. The same small, gray-haired human who moved like a dancer and smiled like a grandfather. But something was different now. Something fundamental had shifted. He was no longer hiding. Greshka felt it first. Her hunting instincts, sharpened by 40 years of killing, screamed a warning she did not understand. Her muscles tensed without her permission. Her hackles rose. Deep in her chest, a growl began to form, not a growl of aggression, but of warning. This creature was dangerous. "What trick is this?" she demanded, her voice rougher than she intended. Dohan did not answer. He simply stood there, perfectly still, his arms loose at his sides, his weight centered, his breathing slow and deep. His eyes were open now, fully open, and they held no warmth at all. They were the eyes of a predator. "No more tricks," he said quietly. "You asked to see what humans truly are. I am showing you." Greshka snarled and lunged. She was the fastest warrior her pack had ever produced. She had killed creatures 3 times her size. She had never lost a fight in her life. Her claws slashed through the air with enough force to tear steel. Dohan moved. It happened so fast that most of the Varn could not follow it. One moment he was standing still. The next, he was somewhere else entirely, and Greshka was stumbling past the space where he had been, but he had not simply avoided her. As she passed, his hand moved a single precise strike to the nerve cluster beneath her arm. The entire limb went numb, flopping uselessly at her side. Greshka spun around, her remaining arm raised to defend. But Dawn was already behind her. How had he moved so fast? How was he so quiet? She could not track him, could not predict him, could not understand what was happening. He struck again. This time, it was her knee, a precise kick to the joint that made her leg buckle. She dropped to one knee, snarling with pain and confusion. "You telegraph your movements," Dohan said calmly. He was standing 3 feet away, perfectly relaxed, as if they were having a casual conversation. "Your body tells me what you will do before you do it. I do not need to be stronger. I simply need to be in the right place." Greshka roared and launched herself at him with her remaining arm. It was a desperate attack, fueled by pride and fury. Dohan did not avoid this one. He stepped forward into her attack, and his palm struck the base of her skull with surgical precision. Not hard enough to kill. Not hard enough to cause permanent damage, but hard enough to send the alpha of the Varn hunting pack crashing to the ground. The silence that followed was absolute. Greshka lay on the stone floor, her limbs twitching, her vision blurred. She tried to rise, but her body would not obey. The human had done something to her nerves, something she did not understand. She was not injured, she could feel that, but her muscles would not respond. She looked up at Dohan with wide, disbelieving eyes. He stood over her, his expression calm but not cruel. There was no triumph in his face, no pride, no mockery. He looked almost sad. "3 strikes," he said quietly. "That is all it took. I did not use my full speed. I did not use my full strength. I showed you what a human can do when we choose to fight." He paused, but fighting was never what made us strong. Greshka's voice was hoarse. "What? What are you?" Dohan looked down at her, and something soft in his eyes. "I am human," he said simply. "We are small. We are soft. We do not have claws or fangs or natural armor. On our homeworld, we were not the strongest creatures. We were not the fastest. We were prey, just as you said." He knelt down beside her, bringing his face close to hers. "But we survived. We survived ice ages and famines and predators that should have eaten us all. We survived not because we were powerful, but because we were patient. Because we were clever. Because we learned to wait and watch. And strike only when we needed to." He stood up. "And when we do strike," he continued, his voice growing harder, "we strike to end things. Completely. Finally. We are the most dangerous predators our world ever produced. Not because of our bodies, but because of our minds. Because of our will. Because when we decide that something must be done, we do not stop until it is finished." The Varn in the crowd were frozen. They had never seen anything like this. Their alpha, their undefeated leader, had been brought down in seconds by a creature they had called prey. Dohan looked at them. His gaze swept across the arena, meeting one pair of golden eyes after another, and then he did something that no human had ever done in Varn history. He threw back his head and roared. It was not a roar like the Varn made. It was not a sound of animal rage. It was something else entirely, a sound that came from the depths of the human soul. It was the battle cry of ancestors who had faced down lions and tigers with nothing but sticks and fire. It was the defiance of a species that had refused to die when the universe wanted them dead. It was the voice of a creature that had crawled out of the darkness and claimed the stars. The sound echoed off the cliffs, filling the arena, shaking the very air. And the Varn, every single one of them, felt something they had never experienced before. Fear. Not the fear of a bigger predator. Not the fear of injury or death. This was something deeper, something older, an instinctive terror that came from the base of the spine, from the ancient parts of the brain that remembered what it was like to be hunted. The human standing before them was not prey. He was not a warrior in the way they understood warriors. He was something else entirely, a predator wearing the skin of prey, a wolf dressed as a lamb, a hunter who had spent weeks letting them believe he was harmless. And now they knew the truth. Coral, who had mocked Dohan so many times, took a step backward. His legs were shaking. His tail had tucked between his legs without his permission. He looked at the small, gray-haired human and saw, for the first time, what had been hidden behind those calm, sleepy eyes. Death. Patient. Calculating. Utterly unstoppable death. Greshka had managed to push herself to a sitting position. Her arm and leg were starting to work again, the numbness fading. She looked up at Dohan with a mixture of shock, respect, and something that might have been admiration. "You held back," she said, "this entire time. You let us laugh at you. You let us mock you. You let us think you were weak. Yes. Why?" Dohan's expression softened. The cold predator faded, and the gentle grandfather returned. But now, after what they had seen, that gentleness was no longer a sign of weakness. It was a choice, a gift, because strength without wisdom is just violence, he said. "I did not come here to dominate you. I did not come here to make you fear humans. I came here to build an alliance, and alliances are not built on fear. They are built on respect." He extended his hand to her, a human gesture of peace. "I have shown you what we can do. Now I am showing you what we choose to do instead. We choose partnership. We choose cooperation. We choose to treat you as equals, not as threats or prey or enemies." Greshka stared at his hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. And the arena erupted, not in mockery, not in laughter, but in something the humans had never expected to hear from the Varn: respect. The night after the Festival of Fangs was the quietest the human delegation had experienced since arriving on Varn Prime. No mockery, no insults, no stones thrown at Dohan during his morning practice. The Varn who passed them in the streets now lowered their heads, slightly a gesture of respect that Yuna had never seen them give to anyone. Outside their own species, everything had changed. Greshka called for a meeting the next morning. Not a negotiation, not a diplomatic session, a meeting. She received the humans in her personal chambers, a room decorated with the bones and trophies of creatures she had hunted across a dozen worlds. She was standing when they entered. Her arm and leg had fully recovered, though she moved with a slight stiffness that suggested some lingering soreness. Her golden eyes fixed immediately on Dohan. "Sit," she said. "All of you." They sat. The atmosphere was different now. Before, the Varn had looked at them like predators examining prey. Now there was something else in their eyes: curiosity, caution, and genuine interest. "I have not slept," Greshka admitted. "I have been thinking about what happened, about what I saw, about what it means." Yuna opened her mouth to speak, but Greshka raised a hand to stop her. "Let me finish." She began to pace, her claws clicking on the stone floor. For 300 years, The Varn have judged all species by the same measure: strength, physical power, combat ability, the willingness to fight and die. We believed this was the only truth that mattered. She stopped pacing and looked at Doan. You have shown me that we were wrong. Not completely wrong. Strength does matter. But there are different kinds of strength. Kinds we never understood. I did not mean to shame you, Doan said quietly. Only to teach. You did both. Greshka's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. And I needed both. I had become arrogant, comfortable. I believed that because no one could defeat me in combat, I understood everything worth knowing. She shook her head. I understood nothing. She walked to a window and looked out at the purple sky. The old one, Bethka, tried to warn me. She said you were not soft, only still. That you were waiting for something. I should have listened to her. Wisdom comes with experience, Dohan replied. She has hunted longer than most. She has learned to see what others miss. Yes, and now I have learned too. Greshka turned back to face the humans. I will speak plainly. The Varan need allies. We are strong in combat, but we are not wise in diplomacy. We do not make friends easily. We do not trust easily, but we trust those who prove themselves. She looked directly at Yuna. You have proven yourselves. Not through speeches or promises, but through action. Your people have shown us something we never expected: strength that does not need to be displayed. Patience that masks power. The ability to choose peace, even when you could choose victory. Yuna felt her heart beating faster. Does this mean? It means you will have your alliance. Greshka's voice was firm. Full military cooperation. Shared technology. Mutual defense. Everything you asked for, and more. The human delegation exchanged glances of disbelief. They had been prepared for weeks more of difficult negotiations. They had been prepared for failure. They had not been prepared for this. There is one condition, Greshka added. Yuna tensed. What condition? Greshka pointed at Dohan. He stays. For 1 year. To teach us. Dohan raised his eyebrows. Teach you what? Everything. How humans think. How you fight without fighting. How you hide strength behind softness. Greshka's eyes gleamed. The Varan have always been hunters. But we have been clumsy hunters, obvious hunters. You have shown us a different way. I want my warriors to learn it. Dohan was silent for a moment. Then he smiled his old, gentle grandfather smile. I would be honored. The formal alliance was signed 3 days later. It was a simple ceremony by Varn standards, no blood oaths, no ritual combat, just an exchange of promises and a clasping of hands. Greshka gripped Yuna's hand firmly but carefully, mindful of her greater strength. The Varan do not forget, Greshka said. Your people have earned our respect. We will stand beside you in battle and in peace. This I swear on my fangs and my honor. And we will stand beside you, Yuna replied. In whatever darkness lies ahead. The delegation returned to their ship that afternoon. All except Dohan, who remained behind with a small bag of belongings and his tea set. Before they left, Yuna pulled him aside. Thank you, she said. I don't fully understand what you did or how you did it, but you saved this mission. You made the impossible happen. Dohan shook his head. I did nothing special. I simply showed them who we are. Who we really are, beneath the technology and the diplomacy and the polite smiles. And who is that? He thought for a moment before answering. Survivors, he said. That is what humans are, at our core. We survived because we learned to adapt. We learned to wait. We learned to be underestimated and to use that underestimation as a weapon. Every species in the galaxy sees us as we appear small, soft, fragile. They do not understand that those traits are not weaknesses. They are camouflage. He looked out at the purple horizon, where the Varn settlement spread across the valley. The universe is dangerous. It is full of predators and disasters and countless ways to die. But we are still here. We have always been here, from the caves to the stars. And we will still be here long after others have forgotten why they ever laughed at us. Yuna felt a chill run down her spine, not from fear, but from understanding. She was seeing Dawn clearly for the first time. Not as a gentle old man, not as a secret warrior, but as something more complex. Something that embodied everything humanity had been and could be. "Safe travels, Ambassador," Dohan said warmly. "Tell the people back home that they have new friends among the stars." She clasped his hand. "I will. Take care of yourself, Dohan. I always do." The shuttle lifted off, carrying the delegation back to human space. Dohan watched it go until it was just a spark against the purple sky. Then he turned and walked back toward the settlement, where Koro was waiting at the gate. The young warrior's posture was completely different now. No arrogance, no mockery. He stood straight but humble, his head slightly lowered in respect. "Master Dohan," he said, "I have been assigned to be your assistant during your stay. Whatever you need, I will provide." Dohan smiled at him. "I need very little. A place to sleep, some hot water for tea, a quiet courtyard for my morning practice. All of this has been prepared." "Good." Dohan began walking, and Koro fell into step beside him, behind him actually, in the position of a student following a teacher. "Then we can begin your training tomorrow." Koro's ears perked up. "My training?" "Of course. You have good instincts and strong spirit. You simply need to learn patience and awareness. I think you will be an excellent student." Koro was silent for a moment. Then, quietly, he asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the festival. "Master, when you first arrived, when we mocked you and threw stones and called you prey, did you hate us?" Dohan considered the question carefully. "No," he said finally. "I understood you. You were doing what you believed was right according to your culture and your values. You were not cruel. You were honest. That is rare and valuable. But we were wrong about you. Yes, but being wrong is not a sin. Refusing to learn from your mistakes, that is a sin." Dohan stopped and turned to face the young warrior. "You have already shown that you can learn. That is why I agreed to teach you. Not because you were strong, but because you were willing to change." Koro lowered his head even further. "I will try to be worthy of your teaching. You already are." They continued walking through the settlement. Varn warriors nodded as they passed, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a week ago. The atmosphere had shifted. Humans were no longer jokes to be mocked. They were mysteries to be understood. And that was exactly how Dohan wanted it. Years later, when the Human-Varn alliance had become the most powerful partnership in the known galaxy, historians would trace it back to this moment. To a quiet old man who had let himself be laughed at, who had hidden his strength behind gentleness, and who had changed an entire civilization with 3 strikes and a single roar. The Varn developed a new saying after that: "Fear the human who smiles when you mock them. They are not weak. They are waiting." And across the galaxy, in training halls and military academies and diplomatic schools, students learned the lesson that Dohan had taught, that true strength is not about domination, but about choice. About knowing what you can do and choosing something better instead. About being patient as a river and just as unstoppable when the time finally comes. The pack remembered. The galaxy learned. And humanity, as always, survived.